So, a couple of important things to know. Israel is also a military deterrence for us. This goes back to the Cold War, like everything does, because the Soviet Union, they wanted control over the Middle East. Okay, we just weren't going to have that because the Soviet Union would have came in and we would have eventually been under communism. Okay, because they would have, the more territory they take. I know it's crazy, but that's the way the world works. Here's where the JFK thing, JFK was not a friend to America. He was not. He did everything to hurt America. He did. And no historian's going to tell you that. And people are going to make excuses and say, well, we don't really know. No, it's obvious. Read the JFK files, read the Cold War, and ask yourself, how could he have see, by him effing up the Bay of Pigs, that led to the Cuban Missile Crisis, which meant the Cuban Missile Crisis, for those that don't know, was the Soviets put a nuke in Cuba right at us. Yeah. I mean, talk about a major F up. In order for that to get all cleared up, Kennedy had to do some secret deals so that they would get their nuke out of Cuba. And that was give up our nuke in Turkey and possibly Italy. But that was all secretive. But that's what was done. Which with Turkey, it really concerned them because they thought now the Soviet Union's going to come and take us over. So then they lost belief in us being able to protect them. So Kennedy caused this complete mess. Again, though, Kennedy's father was a Nazi sympathizer. JFK idolized and saw Hitler as a legend. And for those that don't know, people do know because, the modern day Nazis, let's just call them what they are, love to say how, well, JFK was calling Israel out because of AIPAC. Oh, he sure was. He did everything he could to hurt Israel. When you want to serve the Soviets, when you want to serve the Communist Party, and you're helping to bring it in, you would do F up things like that. This is why he went after the CIA. The CIA and the FBI, although there really wasn't much to report on them prior to JFK. There wasn't. They were doing what they were supposed to do. There was every reason for FBI to surveil King. There was. I mean, talk about the 3Ks just coming in, the perfect storm, RFK, JFK, and MLK. So we ended up really conceding to the Soviet Union. Not a good look. But I think that it's obvious just based on everything Kennedy did, because he's the one that started arming Israel, by the way. Yes, he did. Which ended up causing a lot of Middle East Arab countries to not be happy about that. But JFK was also in with them, of course, although they'd call it diplomacy. Here's the other thing, JFK was the first. So there was some firsts with JFK. He started going after Israel. He armed Israel, ending up, messing, upsetting the Middle East into even more chaos. But because they were also a strategic ally, being there to prevent the Soviet Union from completely invading the Middle East. It's truth. Look it up. So everything Kennedy did was either serve the communists, serve the Nazis. I mean, he just did it in very subtle ways. And again, we would have never got Barack Obama if he wouldn't have paid for airlift to America, because that Obama Sr. came on that, and MLK supported that. So they were all colluding together, in my opinion. I mean, read the MLK files. FBI had every reason to surveil him. But the media's been in their back pocket. The intelligence agencies have been filled with communists since JFK, and they've gotten in everything. So that's the reason our country has gone to shit, and we don't really live under the the Constitution. And, it started with them, JFK, MLK, JFK most particularly, and then leading all the way up to Obama. The other thing JFK did was he was going after Israel, wanting to know about their nuke program. So here's the thing. When it comes to that, I understand why Israel won't. There was an agreement made with Nixon, which obviously was after, Kennedy, with Golda Meir and Nixon. Like, we won't ask and don't tell. Because whether they have a nuke or not, they're not going to want to disclose it, because they're not going to want Iran to know if they do or not. For safety reasons. Really. I know that the modern day Nazis don't like that, but too fucking bad. It's the truth. So I understand why Nixon and Golda Meir made that agreement, and most people have, abided by it. But Kennedy was saying, nope, we want the UN. Kennedy was so far up the UN's ass, and the UN has never been a decent organization. They never have. They are part of the globalist problem. I honestly think that if the damn thing was dismantled, there'd be more peace in the world. I really do. But I felt like that for a very long time, because everything just gets worse with them. The minute they go in with their blue helmet, MPs, and they're humanitarian, which is never humane. They just make everything worse. And they have always been after Israel. But here's why I would say they're after Israel. Well, because these people don't like America. They don't. This is all about power and control. So they've wanted to go after Israel because it's been a strategic ally to us and preventing communists from, getting in. But then JFK, being the undercover communist he was, and Nazi, Hitler idolizer, that's why everything he did ended up hurting America. That's why he immediately attacked the CIA. The CIA and FBI would be the two intelligence agencies that would be looking out for communism. That's the reason they would get involved in these big movements, because you never know. You have to be careful of that stuff. So, during the Cold War, before JFK came in, they seemed to be doing, their best to prevent that kind of stuff. But they've been given this horrible image, all of them. And they do have a horrible image now, because after JFK, he turned it in. Putting a bunch of communists in these organizations has just led to them going after the American citizens more. So, and that's the reason why then you have 9/11 eventually happen. You see what I'm saying? But he was attacking AIPAC, JFK. He was wanting to know, we want to know what's, your nuke sites. You know what? Israel is not going to trust anybody with that stuff. Not given their history. Are you kidding? They have to think about themselves too. I get that. But that's part of the strategy with them there too, was preventing the Soviet Union from taking over the entire Middle East. And the Arabs didn't want that either. So then when Kennedy turned around and to give up nukes in Turkey just to appease the Soviet Union, which really, JFK, it's a communist country. He was serving that communist country by doing that and hurting us. Well, it ended up hurting, the Turkey. Luckily it's been okay, but Turkey was concerned because that was like their safety net, that Russia would not come in, or Soviet Union wouldn't come in there. So everything you're hearing the modern day Nazis saying about get rid of AIPAC, or they have to register, we want to know about Israel's nuke program, we need to stop giving aid. When they say that stuff, realize they're also a strategic ally to prevent communism. So those people, they stand with JFK because they're no different than JFK and MLK. Communist Nazi mentality. That's the reason everything went downhill once JFK got in. Such bullshit. And then eventually, because of the Kennedys, we got Barack Obama Jr. All lines up.